we'll do 400 is the font weight. All right, app header we're going to leave the same. We do want it to have a black background, be the same height, and have the padding. Let's see what else. I think that is pretty much it, right? How's that look? Pretty good, pretty good. Real nice. All right, quick commit on that. Change page title. And header. Markup. Oh, almost forgot. We need to get rid of these two. We don't have an app intro or need to have a spinny logo anymore, so you can get rid of those. For those of you who don't want to type all these rules, I have now pushed the changes. Oh, jeez. I know, typing is hard. All right. So we got our header looking good. If we look at our end product here, we want this to render if we are not rendering any of these other routes, right? So how can we do that? What component do we know that can render something based on route? That was almost a dead giveaway. How about a route component? So one thing we didn't cover, so in programming, if you have a lot of different options, you could do like a giant if, else if, else if, else if, else if. What's another option for that? A switch. Guess what? Router has switches. What? Let's use a switch, because that way we can have this route be the one that matches if it doesn't match any of the other ones. So it's going to essentially be our default switch case. Let's go into app.js. First thing, let's do some imports. Get rid of this logo, we don't need that. Instead, let's import switch and route. From React Router DOM. Thanks again, DOM. And then we basically want this to appear below our header, right? So we can do that. This is the div for our header, so we're just going to go right below that and put in a switch. And then we can put in our route. Now, since we want this to be our default, we're actually not going to give it a path because we just want it to match anything that doesn't match the other ones. So you don't have to give it a path, but that just means it's going to route any, or it's going to match anything. But that's fine. We actually want that to happen. So we're just going to give it a render method. Give it an anonymous function with a paragraph in it. Why doesn't it like that? Oh, right, because I didn't close my tag yet. Don't forget to close your tag. And we'll say, to get started, click one of the links above. Oh, I forgot the equals, that's why. Render equals that. So we've got our switch. Basically, we defined our default case first. So when no other routes match, which is going to be all the time right now because we have no other routes, render this paragraph tag. And theoretically, oh look, To get started, click one of the links above. So, do a quick commit on that, add switch, and default route. All right, so that's cool, but that's kind of boring. We need some other links to do other things, right? And I know David knows what we need, because he mentioned it earlier. Link. All right. Do you guys think we should use Link or NavLink? What was the difference? Anybody remember? One knows when it's active and one doesn't. Which one do you think we should use here? Yeah, that seems cool. So let's also import NavLink. All right. And let's see, where do the nav links go? Let's see. Oh, I see. I got to change a little bit of something so my styling rules work, so we don't have to redo them on the fly. Let's add another div here. App headings. Tab these over. And then, right below that, we're going to do a UL for our nav links. Put an LI in, and then we're going to put our nav link. And where do we want our nav link to go to? Should we do the GitHub one first? Seems like a good idea. So remember, the to property is just where you want it to link to. And that's really all you need. Other than that, you put the text that you want to appear, and then close your tag. Now, if we can link to that, so we get that appeared, click it, it does change our route. So you can see now we're at /GitHub by clicking on that. But nothing changed, right? That's lame. So we need a route that matches /GitHub, right? So this one does get a path because we want it to match when we match that particular URL. And for now, let's just give it a render method as well. And for right now, we'll just have it render an H1 that says GitHub, because it's real excited. Whoa. Hooray. Yeah, Lex.
For the UL.
Uh-huh.
So what did you put that inside?
It's not in a div. Well, I mean, it's kind of in a div, but it's just a child of this div. And I'm going to change, hold on. I think this one would be app headings. Let me see if that does it. There we go. In your CSS, app header to app headings, since we just put that in a different div, the two headings specifically. So we'll do a quick commit there. add link and route for GitHub. What sort of error are you getting? Make sure that you have closed your tags. I always forget these on the routes, the little self-closing tag after the thing.
My big GitHub one's not showing up on my page.
When you click on the link?
There it goes. Okay.
Yeah. So the GitHub is only going to show up when your URL matches /GitHub, right? So if I take that back off, just erase that. Now it's going to render the default. If I click it, that's going to change my URL to /GitHub, meaning that route is now going to match, so it's going to render the other thing.
The one, my to get started, that one, it doesn't go away like yours does. So that's one thing.
Is it inside a switch with the other route?
Yeah, it's the same one.
Because the switch will only render one at a time. So both routes have to be inside the switch. So if it matches /GitHub, then it won't match the other one. Yeah. On this? Can you get better eyes? I'm just kidding. Is that big enough? I don't know that we can go much bigger and still like...
No, just keep going. I'll tell you when.
I'll tell you what.
How about everybody else in the back row? Are you good?
I think it's fine. In fact, that's actually too big. It's kind of out.
It's too big?
I can't see the rest of it. Change it all to Comic Sans.
Having more of this issue with the people in the world where they look block files and stuff.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, NPM 5 is brand new, so who knows? Maybe it's a little buggy. Right. It's probably not us, but it actually is. So just so everyone knows, in case you run into this, like later on tonight when you're working on homework or whatever, if you run into like an issue where it's not able to find an NPM package or something, the easy fix that we found is delete the package lock.json and then just redo the npm install. NPM 5 is brand new. It would seem that maybe not everything is 100% figured out with that lock file, so get rid of it and then just run npm install again. And that seems to fix 99% of those issues. All right. So that's good, other than our links look terrible, and they have this weird dot over here because it's an LI in a UL. That's lame. We should probably style those. I'm just going to paste this in. This is a lot of rules for Nav Links, and we want to get to more fun routing stuff. If you don't want to copy paste, then you can type them all in from the thing I'll post. There you go. But basically, we'll just do a quick walkthrough of the rules that we posted. First, the list style none, so it gets rid of that dot on the LIs. Removes padding on the left side. The LIs are now inline blocks, so they can show up next to each other. Give them a little bit of padding so they're separated. Change the color. Text declaration none, so they're not underlined. Make the font a bit bigger. So this is the part where the nav links come in. So if you look at, so like if we actually inspect our link here, you can see that it's got this class of active, but I believe if I take this off, yeah, so now it has no class. Completely classless. So that's part of what the nav link specifically does for you, is when I click on it, it's going to automatically add that active class for me. And so that way our rule about the active links takes effect, so it's now orange instead of the standard blue. Cornflower blue. Cornflower. All right. Let's style the nav links. All right, so right now, we're just, dang it, get off that screen. We're just doing an inline render for GitHub, but we'd probably like that to be an actual component, right? That'd be a good idea. So let's make an actual component. So instead of render, we're going to say component equals GitHub. And then obviously we're going to need to make that component, would be a good idea. So add a new file. You guys are pros at this. Make a github.js. Do your normal imports. Class GitHub extends component. Don't forget to export it. This is like I'm going fast because you guys have made components a bajillion times now, right? You totally know how to do that. That's fine. And for right now, let's just say something so we can see it. And let's import it into app.js. And that should be it, right? Because we already put in the route for it and told it to render this component when we match /GitHub. Theoretically. Oh, look. I already matched it. Hooray! You made a route that actually goes to a different component. Hooray! All right. Does it what? Yeah, if we could add it, if you want, you can add another nav link back to like home and just tell it the path is /. And so that would go back to that, and it would go back to rendering the default route. All right. So we got the component rendering. What we actually want that to look like is a form, basically, right? So let's make it look like that instead of this, which is, I mean, it's lovely, but it doesn't do a lot for us. All right, so let's get rid of our H1. We'll just give it a class. Oh, why didn't it work? There we go. Wrap everything in a div with the class of GitHub. Did you add the key binding for it? So I've got mine mapped to do control space. We'll always do emit instead of, because sometimes tab isn't the right thing. It's the wrong autocomplete thing. So you can set up a specific key binding that's for emit, so it always does the emit thing when you do that. So my alt is GitHub logo. Source, I'm not going to make you look it up. I will post that source in Slack. So you can put that in there. So that is our logo. We also need a form, right? Don't need an action property. And it's just one input, right? Oh, don't do that. That was bad. There we go. Oh, and actually I'm going to wrap the input in a div. Technically, all of your inputs in a form are supposed to be in their own block level elements. And then we'll do a button, a submit button to be exact. It says look up GitHub user. All right, what's that look like? Real good. Look at our tiny little form down here. And our giant logo. Oh, let's see. Where are my styles for that? Oh, there it is. I'm going to give you the styles for this. So it doesn't look so ridiculous. Now remember, you're in the GitHub components, so you should probably make a GitHub style sheet. Keep your things compartmentalized. And then, of course, don't forget to import your style sheet into the component. And then, theoretically, that should look much nicer. All right. So we got that. Doesn't do anything really yet, other than submit, but not do anything with it. So, what should we do that we have done several times? Make a new component? How about we make it so our React component knows about what's in that box? Right? So we can initialize some state. So basically we're going to do our normal like controlled input. And we're going to use a property initializer this time. We're just going to straight up. No, man. Property initializers. What? Nope. I mean, kind of. I mean, it was in the website. I put a lot of work into that website, and the fact that you didn't know that kind of hurts my feelings. So a lot of stuff that we've done before. So we want, obviously, our thing to show up as no value initially, right? So we initialize our username as a blank string, empty string. And then, so we've got input type. We're going to tie the value to it, right? This.state.username. And then what else do we need other than just the value? Well, what happens if I just do that? On change, right? Because otherwise, right now, I'm not going to be able to put anything in anymore, right? Because the value is always an empty string. So let's give it an on change. And a handle change method. And let's see here. So we really only have one thing in our state, and that's probably all this component's going to need to handle, right? So let's just do well, let's do current target just to be on the safe side. And then we're just going to set state, right? So I signed, so our current target is what? The input. So I assigned the value of that, so whatever we typed in there, to a variable called username, and then I can just use destructuring through set state to update the value, right? So I should be able to type, and we should also be able to see that if I look at the GitHub component, my username is updated. Now again, we're in a router, so you can see I've got these extra props. We didn't ask for the props, we just get them automatically because we're inside the router. So I've got history, location, and match. Take a quick look at some of those. Make this bigger. So history's got all these things, all these methods that we talked about: push, go back. Location tells us where we are. The match. Currently we have an exact match because we're at /GitHub. It tells us our path, our URL, and currently we have no params. So again, when you are wrapping your whole app in a router, then every child component automatically gets these three things. So there's information in that that you can use to do cool stuff. All right. Probably a good time for a commit. Let's see, what should we do? Now you notice if we look at our finished example here, if I have not looked something up, I am rendering this, but then once I do enter a name, that goes away and we render something else. So we've seen one way, which is a switch, right? To kind of have a default. Do I really need a switch in this particular case? Probably not, because there's really only two conditions. Either I have a username or I don't. So we can use a different technique, which is an exact match on a route. So where are our routes going to render? Like, where are they at physically on the page? I mean, they're right below the form, right? So that's where we should probably put our route. So our form ends here. So we're going to add a route. And remember, we want this little paragraph to show up when we have an exact match on /GitHub, but not if it's anything other than that. So if there's anything after GitHub, we don't want it to match anymore because we want to be looking for a username, right? So we're going to say route, also tell it exact. And when we have an exact match, we just want to render, enter a username to search on GitHub. And do not forget to close your route tag, because I always do. And then I get errors every time. Oh, right. We did not. What did we not do? We didn't import it. Can't just use components all willy-nilly. So see, I always have to forget something. Like, I remembered to close the tag that time, I didn't import it. All right, so let's see here. So yeah, we see that now. Because we have an exact match. Now probably, my guess is, if I do anything else, it goes away, right? Because it's not an exact match anymore. So you can add whatever gibberish you want, unless it's an exact match of /GitHub, then you will not see that render. Yeah. So that's if this form is submitted. When a form submit, it appends like basically search parameters to your URL, but we didn't really pass it anything, so it doesn't put anything after the question mark. And you put the exact in there. Well, you broke React Router. That's a good question. You hit enter after you put it in? So like all you should have to do is put something in, hit enter, and it should go away. But at any rate, let's see here. Add path, or add route for exact match of /GitHub.
What all did you put at the top of that GitHub class before the render part? Oh, okay.
Just imported the route. Mm-hmm. Is that good? All right, so what do we actually want to have happen when we submit this form? We want to add the username to the URL, right? That seems like something we could do. So I did, and it should be pushed. Yeah. So if we want something to happen on submit, what kind of handler do I need? On submit handler for the form. That seems like a good idea. And let's just, as suggested, let's do a handle submit. So when this form's submitted, we're going to call our handle submit method, which we have not written yet, but we are about to. First thing we want to do, we don't actually want to do the default thing and refresh the page, right? So let's prevent default. And now we get to use one of our fun new tools, which is we want to, yeah, history. Good guess. So what do we want to do with history? Yeah, so we want to go somewhere new, right? So we want to push a new history location onto that history object. So we access history by this.props.history. And then it has a push method. And then we just tell it where we want to go. So we want to go to /GitHub/ whatever the username is, right? And where are we currently storing the username? In state. So we can do a little string interpolation. Yeah.
So does that mean that since you're adding /GitHub at the beginning, does that mean that it won't go from the current location? It'll go based on the home directory?
Yeah.
So it's not appending, it's like literally overriding. Okay.
Right. Now if I didn't put the slash, then yes.
It will go from the home?
Yeah, I believe so. Because I think if I don't put the slash, then it will do /GitHub/this. So. All right, let's see. So if I type something in here, there we go. Now it says /test. So that's pretty easy, right?
Does that make it go away, Carson?
Yes, it does.
So let's see, what do we do? Add submit handler on the form and push to new history location. So history is basically just the history of all the places you've gone inside the app, all the routes you've been to, things like that. And so by pushing a new entry onto history, yeah, kind of an array-like thing. Carson, you're just going to break everything today? All right, so we're getting close to the end of class, so I do want to at least get through this first component and get some stuff from GitHub. So now we've got it to where we can go to GitHub and push whatever we want on here, right? So as far as our routes go, we've got a route that matches the exact thing. We probably need one that matches this new URL, right? So below our exact match, let's add another route. And this time we're going to do, let's see, /GitHub, and then we're going to use our params. Anybody remember how to do that? I'm going to just call it username, since we've been calling it that everywhere else. Sure. For now, let's just render something. Now, we haven't been providing anything as an argument, but really it gets props. We just haven't used the props for anything. So we could pass props in. Specifically, what we want is the match object, so I'm actually going to deconstruct into match here. And then, just to show that we can get that information out of the path, you can say, nice job. You searched for match.params.username. So, when our path matches /GitHub and then some param, which we're going to call username, we're going to have it render, and we're going to get that match object as one of our props, so we deconstruct it. And then we can get that param by using match.params.username. And you get to close your tag. So theoretically, yeah, look at that. So you can put whatever you want in here, look it up. That pushes it here, does that history.push. And then we're rendering a different component that looks at that match object and gets the params.username out of it. Make sense? All right. Let's do, instead of a render, let's do another component that we will call GitHub user. I think I have an extra bracket there. Do our normal imports. Do our normal export. Now we'll just return something to make sure we wired it up correctly. And don't forget to import it. Failed to compile. Sounds made up. It's right there. Export default GitHub user. Oh, duh. It's not a named export, it's a default. There we go. Add GitHub user component, push that up. All right. So what we want to have happen is when we match this route, and therefore it's going to load our GitHub user component for the first time, we want to actually fetch data from the GitHub API for whatever username we passed in, right? And where do we put stuff that runs when we first load a component? Component will mount is fine. It's kind of been superseded more recently in ES6 by constructor. So you can use component will mount. It's not different really than the constructor. It's just before ES6 usage was common, they would run the component will mount. Don't forget to call super. And then let's run a method that we'll call fetch user data. Data, not date. And let's just console log something so we can see that it ran. So again, when we submit, we do a history.push/GitHub/ whatever the username is. That will then match this path instead of the exact path match. Render the GitHub user component. When that gets constructed, it's going to call fetch user data. And so we should see that console log as soon as we match one. And we do. So if I refresh again, we matched, so you can see that. Sweet. So how do we actually get stuff from GitHub? Yeah, using fetch. You can see GitHub has a very nice API documentation. And we want, so this is full documentations of the full REST API.